Gentlemen, y'all strive for gold in your life, right? Gold medals, gold watches, gold everything. However, there is a certain type of man who goes the extra mile. He walks with confidence of a lion and he giggles in the face of danger. He's a big, hairless winning machine. And when he unzips his pants, he sees platinum. That's right. Manscaped would like to announce that their biggest and best ultimate hygiene bundle, the Platinum Package 4.0, is now available worldwide. JT, Manscaped is the leader in below-the-waist grooming. Now trust them with your whole hygiene routine.
Amazing. Amazing. Give this man the Academy Award.
This is the real deal, guys, but in seriousness.
No, it's great. It's actually great.
We got the Platinum 4.0 package. They sent it to us.
Yes.
We've both been using it.
Yep.
And I believe that for a hairy gentleman, you had success.
I did. When I was on the road and I was traveling overseas, it was actually awesome. Not surprisingly, but, I also get a bit hairy shoulders, hairy forearms. It just across the board, the thing that really I loved was is really quick. And battery life is great. And it's a compact little unit. It does the business.
Yeah.
It was really good. I'm a fan. Like I didn't know what to expect at first, but now I'm like total convert. It's really good.
I'm exactly the same. And look, so you guys know what's up. Manscaped have partnered with us to sponsor the show. So we'll be plugging them on the show, the audio version and also the YouTube one. And we're super stoked to do that because we both use the product. I actually used it before they sent us the 4.0 package, and I've always been a supporter of it. I like staying clean and tidy, and Manscaped helps me do that. So check it out. You too can have this same level of hygiene. You can get 20% off and free shipping when you use the code GRIZZLY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. It's time you enjoyed the finer things in life. Get yourself a platinum package for your platinum package.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. I am JT Tatami, and you are also with Judo Joey.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
I did judo for a bit.
Yes, I do believe.
And I fucking quit.
It can happen.
Because my fingernails were too long and the coach made me write lines 100 times. I will cut my nails before judo practice.
What school is this?
At Gladesville RSL Club.
Tough.
Community Hall.
Old school.
Yeah, some real killers come out of there.
Oh, no doubt.
They're all in Japan now.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about building muscle for BJJ. Now, this is something that a lot of people say they want to do, but actually are not very successful at.
Well, I would argue a lot of people don't admit to wanting to do this.
Oh, okay.
I just want to get strong, and just get fit. And you're like, man, tell me more about that. Yeah, people are like, I want to put on lean muscle mass and I want to look jacked.
Do I have to eat liver to look like Liver King? No, I think there is some key elements here that really get neglected. I feel like when people put on their BJJ lens, their glasses, they think, I do jiu-jitsu. A lot of things just go out the door. But when you're speaking to people in other realms of sporting pursuits, whether, it might be rowing or baseball, cricket, basketball, whatever, people listen to advice and they stick to it to achieve what they want. But with jiu-jitsu, it's like, nah, jiu-jitsu over everything. And you're like, but that might actually not help you achieve your goal of putting on some muscle. So what I wanted to talk about...
I would say the professionals would stick to it. Like
yes.
The good athletes.
Sure.
But yeah, the hobbyists are like, we all want to be like, we want to pretend we're like athletes. But when it comes down, it's like, I'm not prepared to give up Netflix to go to bed an hour earlier.
I know some, I'm just going to put it out there. I know some tradies out in Penrith who are, they're doing whatever it takes to put the muscle on.
Absolutely.
They're eating the extra chickens. They're doing peptides.
They're doing those burpees.
They're doing, they'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. So it's interesting when I speak to jiu-jitsu guys and girls who are like, yeah, I'd like to put on a bit of size. And people just, it seems obvious, but people skip steps. So I want to go to the first step, which I think people neglect, which is nutrition. And we won't go break down super hard into macros, but I think one of the biggest problems is people undereat.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's just kind of lay out the format. There's some key principles to building muscle.
Yes, sir.
And these are what bodybuilders adhere to. And
religiously.
Yeah, and strongman and like anyone that's in a sport where, the creation of muscle mass is required. And it's pretty simple, actually. Mm. And one of those key sort of principles or pillars is that you have to be eating enough food for your body to build muscle.
Yes.
Right? Now, So, and this is going to be news to a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
For the strength aficionados, they're like, yeah, no shit, bro.
Obviously.
Yep. But the thing is that you also have to take into account how much energy you're using in your day to day.
Yes.
So for anyone that's training jiu-jitsu, you're burning through a fuckload of energy.
Yep.
So the tricky part there is that if you're not force feeding yourself generally, you're not going to be having a surplus of resources to build new muscle.
And another thing that you had mentioned too, Joe, and I actually had experienced this recently, so I was like, oh, now I know what Joe's talking about, which is the post-training suppression of hunger. Like so much adrenaline.
You had this only recently?
Only recently, like on my trip recently. I've never had it before.
Whoa.
I had a ridiculously hard session and I couldn't do anything. I just couldn't eat. I was lucky if I could even drink a Gatorade. I was smoked and I knew I should have eaten something, but I almost couldn't. All I had to like force feed me. I felt way better after, but I just couldn't.
Well, they say that those ducks that they make foie gras from,
Yes.
apparently they actually really enjoy having the tube shoved down their throat and the grain pushed in. Like apparently when it's feeding time, they all waddle up to the
That
tube.
sounds pornographic. The duck likes it like this.
Yeah, it's like at first the tube feels a little bit uncomfortable, but then it's like, but actually I get a lot of food in quick, so I'm down.
Just doing protein bongs. No,
You know that, right? Foie gras?
Yeah.
Like they fucking swell
They
up the
make
liver.
them so
and,
fat.
Yeah.
Get the fattiest liver. Yeah.
But in any case, yeah, so I'm really surprised that was the first time you'd experienced that.
No, I never struggle with hunger. I've always eaten. And I think I've been obsessed with just trying to be as big and as strong as possible. And it was really drummed into me from a really early age. You must eat protein. Because a pro bodybuilder told me about positive nitrogen balance. And he explained to me how hard it is to achieve positive nitrogen balance for your muscles to grow. And that doesn't just require protein, that requires carbs. And I think one of the biggest problems, and when I interviewed Andrew Reid, he was saying, no, one of the biggest problems with jiu-jitsu guys specifically is they want to look like physique athletes. They want to be totally ripped. They want to be super jacked. But the thing is, physique athletes only look like that for a small period of time. They don't always look like that. But Instagram kind of wrecks your perception of reality.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing photos of super jacked guys all the time. And you're saying like jiu-jitsu athletes should eat more like footballers. They need to eat a really good portion of carbs, good portion of fats, and plenty of protein. Because they need the fuel and they also need enough of the building blocks there. And, you know.
You might not have the six pack that's like cut from stone.
Yeah.
You might, look at Tony, you might look more like Buchecha.
Yeah.
Let's say like,
Yeah, sure.
but that's like in many ways, that is the optimal kind of physique for what we're doing, isn't it?
That's perfect, yeah. And I think, don't get me wrong, I've always...
Shout out to Buchecha, by the way. Great physique.
Shout out, Marcus. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for listening. I think it's a tough thing because vanity tells us like, oh, but if I don't have a six-pack, I'm not fit.
Yeah.
That's not true. Like some of the fittest people in the world, they don't have a ripped six-pack. And it's just this psychological thing. It's like a body dysmorphia for men. In a way, and I know I definitely got it because there's times when I go, oh man, I'm not big enough. So Jesus Christ, I'm 95 kilos. Like, what am I not big enough for?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to get bigger. That's stupid. But then you've got all these images telling you, oh, get bigger. So when it comes
Plus,
to
you're training next to me. You know what I
True.
mean? So it's like you're always going to be aspiring. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, no one can blame you, bro.
I didn't say taller. I said bigger. But I think it's this thing that what people definitely underrate is, oh, carbs. Carbs is the enemy. Nah, I'm not going to eat carbs.
Well, let's just go back to first that. So what are we talking about when you said you couldn't eat after the class? What's going on there?
Well, when you have that huge adrenaline dump, it suppresses your hunger intentionally. Because if you were trying to escape a war or a tiger or whatever it is, you need to not be eating. You need to be focused on getting the fuck out of there. And so that's really a survival instinct. The only problem with that is when it's time to come back down to recovery, if you haven't gone through a process of calming yourself down, your body's still in fight or flight. And even though you're trying to calm down, and I mean, for me, I sweat. I'm a sweaty guy. I've had a shower, I've changed clothes, and I'm still pumping sweat. Your body is not ready to do the rest and digest phase. And I think, so if we talk about recovery and behavior, and we've done that before, making sure that you've taken time to slow down after training is really important for you to then take the next step to eat and bounce back and get your muscles to grow.
Yeah, and that's so if we go back to that kind of resource discussion, whereby if you want to put on muscle mass, you need to be eating in surplus of your maintenance calories, which is the amount of calories you need to be eating on a daily basis to stay exactly as you are. So if you want to get bigger, you got to be eating beyond that, right?
Yes.
If you're finishing jiu-jitsu and you don't feel like eating, and as a result, you're just not eating much, maybe you wait for a few hours and maybe you skip dinner, maybe it's a small meal. Well, it's very hard to be eating in excess of your maintenance,
surplus,
right? And so this is the real tricky. I know this has been me forever. I usually finish, not so much these days, but for a long time, finish jiu-jitsu and not want to eat.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, that's the first big fuck up. You're not getting enough food.
Yeah. And also it's very easy to skip meals. Like have a protein shake. Yeah, protein shake's good, and we've talked about this before, and everybody's metabolism is different. But if you're not satisfying that basic criteria of 3 well-rounded meals, you're not going to grow. And sure, you can put in snacks, you can put in all kinds of other things, but essentially supplements are to supplement. They're not a meal replacement. Like, that's not what it's about. And I think that's where a lot of people are missing. And for me, more recently, I've had to let go of that idea of, I just want to be ripped all the time. If I want to get stronger, I have to get bigger, which means I might have to put on a little bit of body fat. So I've got to say, do I want to be stronger or do I want to look strong?
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And the thing that I have learned from many people smarter than me is that if you want to build muscle, you might have to put on a little bit of body fat. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean, you're going to blow out. So I think what can hold people back there is the difference between how I look and how I perform. And you've got to eat to grow. I think it's hard to really tell people this strongly enough, because often we don't know how many calories we burn when we do jiu-jitsu. Because a lot of the time, I think you had a Whoop for a while and you were playing with that, Joey. And people, when they run, they might have a polar heart rate monitor or whatever. It's way easier to track your heart rate when you're running and your calorie output when you're running. But when you do jiu-jitsu, it's such a mixed bag of strength and cardio and all of that. So
and Whoop, just on that, like a wearable, like a Whoop, they can't measure strength. Like, it can't measure force output.
No, it's not
They can measure cardiovascular activity.
Sure.
So, even when you tell it, I did an hour of strength training this morning, it doesn't really give you any, like, it doesn't change your stats.
No.
It can tell you more about your recovery from you telling it that, but yeah.
Sure.
So should we move on to the next thing, or should we just give our basic...
Let's be real. Let's give our people what is something they can do right now. What can they change about their eating, which is going to help them build muscle? All
right, here's my advice.
Please.
If you're trying to build muscle, first thing, you should be eating all day like someone has a gun to your head.
Yeah.
And I heard Tim Ferriss say that when he was doing 4-Hour Body, and it's absolutely true. Right? You have to be force feeding. It won't be comfortable.
Yep.
Second practical thing that you can do is download a free app, MyFitnessPal.
Yep.
Punch in your stats, create an account, punch in your stats. It'll tell you, it'll ask you what you want to do, tell you want to put on weight, and then it will spit out, this is how many calories you need to eat per day. Eat that many calories. Do that for 2 weeks. If you're not gaining weight, increase calories by 10%. Do that for don't even worry about how much you're training. Just follow a number religiously. And if it doesn't work, if there's no change after 2 weeks, add 10% and keep following that pattern until you notice that every day when you step on the scales, you're getting bigger.
Yeah, and I'm with you. If you want to be a bigger person, you've got to eat like a bigger person.
Yeah.
That's basically how it goes. The next thing, which I think is one of the biggest missing pieces of the puzzle, is sleep. And this is what people don't talk about. People say to me, oh man, I'm lifting all the time, I'm eating, and I'm like, how's your sleep? They're like, it's terrible. I'm like, well, that's a huge problem, because when your body regulates growth hormone and testosterone is sleep. And I think this is where most people let themselves down.
Yeah, I think it's pretty widely recognized that amongst us folk in the West who are working longer hours than we should be, who are training more than we should be, we all fuck up on sleep. And the more you look into it, right, the more you hear these people that research the shit saying, man, like, you're not going to put on weight if you're not sleeping enough. you might be able to get away with it a little bit in your 20s.
Sure.
But I would say like once you hit your 30s, around that, like if you're sacrificing on sleep, it'll inhibit your ability to make gains.
But would you say it's harder to get sleep in your 30s? Like say you've got kids, you run a business. Do you feel like that it affects it more?
In a way, like, yeah, that's definitely considerations that affect it. But when I think about my behavior now, I'm like I behave like a dad.
You
I come home every day. We have dinner at 6:30.
Nice.
Like it's more. Yeah. Whereas when I was in my 20s, I'd go train jits and then I'd go down to the pub. It's steak night. Have a couple of beers. Oh, what time I get home? 11 o'clock. So life was less routine then.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think for me too, I've made the big switch. Shout out Julian.
Sup, Jules?
Young guns.
Just walked in late.
Bloody 21-year-olds. Big night on the sauce.
You didn't tell him not to bother coming in?
Well, I told him we'd replaced him. But, we got a new intern, Mikey. Hey, Mikey. But I think it's one of those things. Like I used to just compensate with caffeine. Like I was like, if I'm tired, just caffeine.
Yeah.
And now I have actually gone, well, you know what? Like if I'm actually really sincere and I'm telling myself I want this goal of being stronger, I really need to sleep. And this isn't about being bigger. This is like your nervous system requires for you to recharge. So if you want maximum power output, big lifts or whatever it might be, and being strong also helps you to lift more, which will help you grow muscle too. Sleep is so essential. And now I'm someone who can nap. Not everybody can do that. And not everyone has the freedom or liberty to do that. But typically at about 3 p.m., depending on what's going on, I'll get a cheeky half an hour, 45 minutes. That makes a big difference for me cognitively as well. Because if I don't have a nap in the afternoon, I turn to a grumpy toddler, and then I'm not fit to be dealt with, which is not good for anybody.
It tells me a lot about our shoot days when we're creating content for Bulletproof.
I just disintegrate. Yeah. Good in the morning, good till lunch, and then after lunch, productivity disintegrates. But if we just understand this, guys, if you look at a lot of your jiu-jitsu heroes, i.e. Gordon Ryan, the guy is on more supplements than anyone can imagine. Now, does he train a lot? Yeah, he does. But know that you are not going to achieve this physique look by compensating just drinking bang energy drinks or whatever. Like you're not, but I'm ripped. But I'm big. But it's not happening. The sleep piece, like you can't cheat it. The whatever stack Gordon is on, we're not going to say sleep is that. But if you can just say sleep is steroids, which is literally is, your body is releasing the growth hormone, your body is producing the testosterone, then why would you not want to maximize that if you're trying to get more muscle?
Yeah, where I think the way I try and think, the way I kind of model it in my head is you have these inputs like nutrition, weight training, like stimulus, sleep, etc. And when you're young, you can get away with not performing well on all of them.
Yes.
And I think we got away with not much sleep and being over caffeinated, right? Sure. We got stronger, we got bigger, all those things.
Yeah.
But the question is could we have made it a lot easier for ourselves? And could we have been a lot more effective? Like, could we have gotten much more return on investment by doing all of the inputs well? Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Then the thing is you get a little bit older and all of a sudden you won't go anywhere unless all inputs are being managed very well.
No, you got to play it smarter. You got much less margin for error.
Yeah. And I think that performance enhancing drugs allow you to fuck up on some of those inputs.
Yeah.
Like they give you leeway. You're not getting much sleep. Maybe it doesn't matter. you're still getting the hormones.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where one of the big advantages of those are, obviously.
But as you said before, Joe, what is it? The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
That's right.
Right. I remember the first podcast interview I did with Joe on the JB's podcast. He dropped that, and I was like, I know that. He's like, which movie? Come on, boys, which movie? Which movie was it?
Well, I want to put it out there to the people.
Oh, let them.
If you guys know that, if you know the reference, let us know through the Instagram, and I don't know, I'll send you something.
Yeah, that'd be good. Here's the thing. I personally feel that the misunderstanding is you can't skip any of these, and so we're gonna move from this. Obviously, some nights you might only get 6 hours. Okay, but if you are sincere, you want to grow muscle. You want to build a body that is stronger and more jacked, you got to prioritize sleep. So that either means going to bed an hour earlier or starting a little bit later. Can you do that?
Yeah.
If you can't start later, then you've got to go to bed earlier, which means you've got to switch the TV off a bit earlier. You've got to stop scrolling Instagram. You've got to stop listening to this podcast right now, switch it off and go to bed. No, always listen to this podcast.
Keep it running so we get the stats.
It's clocking over.
Yeah, it's good for us, but just put it in another room.
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
And for a lot of people, if it's like, oh, but I train at night and I don't get home till 8:30 and then I got to get up at 4:30 to go to work.
Yeah.
If that's the situation for you, like if you actually cannot get enough sleep because of what you have going on in your life, you need to sit down and do an honest review of what your priorities are.
Yes.
Because it's okay if you want to do that. Like we've all done that for periods. Fucking did it for like a decade. But you can't then also expect like, oh, I also want to build muscle, because it's unreasonable.
Yeah.
So if building muscle is the main thing you want, all right, find a way to train jits at a different time of the day, or find a way to start work later, but you have to make that time.
Yeah. And I think this is where we come to our last point, which is actually, I find it an interesting point because I've been reading lots of different information from different people, is the lifting. Obviously, we need the stimulus to get the muscles to grow. Now, some people feel they need to train 4 or 5 times a week. Some people get really good gains training twice a week, depending on the session. And, you know, I've listened to many different muscle authorities. And when I first started in training, it was always the classic, 3 sets of 10 type thing.
Yeah.
But then as that evolved over time and I started reading a bit more kind of peer review science on it, they were saying, oh, well, actually you can build muscle if you lift 5 reps. But it depends on the human.
Yep.
You get a guy like Chris Hemsworth, obviously a few supplements in that bad boy, but he lifts very high volume, like super light, super high volume.
Right.
Because
we're talking like 20 plus reps?
We're talking 20 to 30
okay.
on some movements.
Sick fuck.
Oh, God. Gosh,
it's a painful rep
a lot
range.
of pain.
Yeah.
But it's a lower chance of injury because
Yeah.
he's lifting really light.
Yeah.
And so there's no...
Get off those baby weights, Chris.
Stupid baby arms. I think one of the things is like that, even though people get really hooked up in like, what's your tempo, what's this, what's that, the consistency is the thing. It's not even... You could have a not a great day in the gym, but going there, doing some lifts, getting a pump on and maintaining the habit, it's that consistency which is going to enable you to build the muscle. Some days you're going to train heroic and then other days you're going to train lethargic. But you're training and consistently keeping the habit of lifting is super key. So whether that's 2 days a week, 3, 4 days a week, however you can fit it in, I believe the consistency on the lifting is what prevails there.
Yeah, I strongly agree. I think that where people get confused in that whole thing is like it's really common in this fitness space to talk about like the nuances of training.
Tempo.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, you got to be doing drop sets. You got to be doing slow eccentrics.
Time under tension.
Yeah, pyramids, man. 5-3-1. Like it's German volume training. Like all these different things that all work.
Yes.
If you are a highly advanced lifter, i.e. you've been doing strength training for a long time, then you're going to have to know about these more nuanced things because you've kind of maximized your
strength potential.
That's right. Whereas if you're newer to the game, which I'm imagining most of the people listening are kind of in that sort of earlier stage.
Could be.
And I say that because most of our jiu-jitsu counterparts don't really lift that much.
No, they don't.
So it's like, all right, well, how am I getting into it? The specifics don't matter too much, right? What matters is that you do it regularly, and exactly to JT's point, consistency is the thing.
Yeah, actually, a great phrase I got from a guy called Paul Smith, who was like one of the natural Australian bodybuilders for a period of time, great physiotherapist. He said a poor program done well is better than a great program executed poorly.
Yeah.
He's like, don't get too caught up in like, oh, what's your split and what are your exercises? Obviously, if you want to build muscle, there's different ways that you can achieve it. But having the habit of, whether you're at home, lifting in your garage, or making time to go to the gym, putting that extra bit of time in to build your body and have that habit is the absolute key. So if we can look at these boxes and go, right, I am eating consistently, I'm sleeping quite well, and I'm lifting consistently, then you should be on the right track. But it does take a little bit of time. So you've got to be patient with yourself with these things. Don't quit in the first month if you're not looking like Liver King.
Yeah, one of a fella that I've been chatting with who's in the jiu-jitsu realm, I think he's He's in juvenile division at this point, I think. He'll be a blue belt soon. But he wanted some help with his training, and he's been trying to put on some weight, and he has been putting on some weight. But he's a skinny kid typically. And I asked him what he's been doing in the gym, and he said, I've been following the program from Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding.
Classic, right?
Which is a classic book for anyone that's interested, but it has some great information in there, but really it's very kind of 1980s sports science about bodybuilding. And one of the sort of most typical things you'll see with bodybuilding training is that they will split the body up into body parts, right? Sure. So it's like leg day, back day, chest day, shoulders and abs, day, right?
Whatever, yeah.
So you got like 4 or 5 different days that it takes to cover the whole body.
Yep.
Now, I would say that probably the biggest mistake for a young lifter or for a young person who's trying to put on a bit of muscle and trying to get stronger is trying to do that.
Yeah.
Because you just don't have, you're just not able to train at an intensity that warrants only hitting one body part once per week.
Once a week, no.
Yeah, you're better off to stick to compound lifts,
Definitely.
right? Big lifts that hit more muscle groups at the same time. And then you can do that 2 or 3 times a week.
Definitely.
And that's the classic thing. You're squatting, you're deadlifting, you're pushing, pulling, and so I think that that's really important. I know that I went through it as a young guy.
Sure.
Trying to do the bodybuilding thing.
We all started there.
It just didn't work.
No.
I just didn't get. And then once I started just doing some basic compound shit, I'm getting thicker and bigger now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing that even though people can be putting on muscle for the beach, aesthetics, sure, there's also an element which is functional hypertrophy, which is muscles that you're going to use and are going to help you your whole life. So if you cultivate a strong squat, that has crossover to so many things. The same way having a strong deadlift is crossover to many things. And we won't go super hard on the philosophy of it, but essentially, if you can get into good habits now, it doesn't matter if you're 45 or you're 15, and you keep those habits consistent, they will serve you. And that's really what we're talking about, is making sure that you're doing things that are bang for your buck, and they're going to serve you for your whole life, not just in jiu-jitsu. So you can be great on the mat and also be jacked at the beach.
Fucking A. I mean, to your point there's, you're getting jacked at the beach, but there's also functional hypertrophy. They're the same thing, right?
Yeah, essentially the same.
But we're talking about how it's perceived.
Yes.
And I think that when we opened the episode where it's people don't want to admit, I'd like to get a bit bigger.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Ah.
It serves, it's actually really healthy to carry, it's to carry muscle mass on your body.
Definitely.
There is a point where it becomes a little bit, extreme. And that's the realm that bodybuilders play in.
Sure.
And we're not talking about taking that to that level, but I think that it should be kind of normalized in this realm.
Yeah.
That building muscle and wanting to look stronger and be stronger is totally okay.
Definitely.
For
sure. All right, Joe, what do we got for the people?
All right, so a couple things. If you're watching us on the YouTube, we appreciate you guys. Thank you. We've actually been getting really good traction through the podcast episodes on the tube. So keep crushing it. If you guys have got comments, throw them up. Sorry, I'm sometimes a little bit slow in getting back to you. I just haven't developed a really good habit around that yet, but that's coming. We have coming up the release of our app.
Yes, sir.
And that will be dropping within the next, by the time you're hearing this, I guess it'll be before Christmas.
Yes, sir.
It'll be before Christmas. Now, here's just to let you guys know where our head's at with the app. We wanted to take everything with our existing online program, which lives on a website, and put it into an app where the user experience would be vastly improved.
Yes.
We haven't ventured to make a lot of changes, but we've ended up making a lot of, a lot of additions, right?
We actually have made changes.
Yeah, we've got some really cool features on that I won't go into too far now.
No.
One of the coolest things, though, that is relevant for the people who are already close to us, we will be closing down our Facebook community, which is all, I think it's got 2,000 people in it plus. And it's actually quite a thriving community because we've built our own community group within the app.
Yes.
Which is fucking sick. I personally don't like to engage with Facebook much these days. I would only ever go there to talk in the group.
To our people.
So I'm happy that can now all live on the app where the training and all that and the podcasts are all there in the one space.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully you guys are excited about that too. Sorry, you might feel a bit butthurt if you're a big fan of Facebook, but I haven't met anyone who is a fan of Facebook for a long time.
No, I mean, and it's, I think it's, the great thing about it is it's a better way to connect with Joey and I because we'll be on there every day.
Yeah.
And it's going to grow and expand. And I think the cool thing is we're not locked in and fixed in the same way Facebook is. If we feel something should be a feature or something should change, we can do that. So I think what's great is about, and this is why we love you guys, you're very patient with us when we fuck up because we're learning. But what's cool is the way we shape it is what you need. It's what you want. So we take on your feedback and we adapt it, and that's what we do to make it better. And by having our own app, it's like our own shop, so we can adjust it and make it better. So I'm really excited to see how people respond.
Me too. Last thing, we have a small run of T-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
Which are going to be available by the time you're hearing this. They are navy blue. If you go to, they're fucking sick with the white fist. If you go to bulletproofforbjj.com and go to the shop, you'll be able to get them there. This was a limited run, so we don't have a lot of sizes available. First in is best dressed.
Yes, sir.
So if you want them, get on there ASAP. And we will do another run next year. We've been trying to figure out a new system of producing and distributing our merch, which has been tricky in the past. And I think that what we have now is really good. So this is the first run. If it goes well, we'll do a bigger run the next time and that whole thing. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, bro.
Peace.